Hi there everyone, my name is Jonathan Detwiler. I'm from Buttonwood Renovations on the South Shore, and I'm an antique home specialist. We are here today at the Golden Ball Tavern Museum. We're going to be walking around looking at some of the architectural details. Mysteries abound. This is a fantastic property. It's non-restored. It is full of archaeological treasures. Come with us on a little journey and check it out. Okay, as we're coming up to the front door here, we can notice some things that are a little peculiar, that are a little different. Obviously, somebody's done some repair work on here. You got a lot of horizontal cut lines. This base block would have been different, and it would have usually had a bed molding on the top, not someone's interpretation of what this particular molding is. But unfortunately, you know, we don't have any pictures or any evidence from the early 1800s to show what was there. This, I believe, this little band molding, 2 1/4 inch bale molding, is an after effect. I do not think this was original to structure. These pilasters, the modillions, this whole entranceway is spectacular. These to me seem a little bit busy. You know, it's an add-on, maybe it covers up a seam, somebody's interpretation, but this most likely would have been flat. Now, once again, this is all, there's no real true answers here. We're just kind of like looking at existing and what we have to try and figure out where we're going with this. One thing which is of particular interest is, if you look at this door, it's got a real back cant to it, but yet the transom light is going the other direction. Now, what's interesting about that is your cap piece is still truly horizontal. So I'm not sure if at some point in time there was a rod issue down here and this whole jamb, because this is where the door is hinged off of, has dropped. That could have happened 100 years ago. Who knows? We've obviously got the old glass. This is a replacement piece here. If you go on the inside, it does look like there was something here, but I'm not sure that's original to 1768. These clapboards, they've been replaced. They are continuous running length. They've got a butt joint here originally, and we'll take you up to the evidence room to show you the original clapboards that were on the house that have still been preserved when they slid another house to the property. They would have originally been 4 foot long, skive joint, like a rose-headed nail. These are obviously replaced. The reveal is probably about the same, but I believe when you go upstairs, you'll see that it's tighter. These windows right here, these appear to be original sash. You can tell, or I can tell by glasses. It's a through tenon sash on the corners, as well as the muntin bars. And the muntin bars go through the stile, and you can see the pins that held this whole frame of the sash together. There are no wooden fasteners, there are no metal fasteners in the sash. It's all by joinery and by wooden pins. This guy here, I'm pretty sure they did have some window replacements at some point in time. They matched the exact same style of the muntin bars, the width, but I could tell by looking at some of the glass, it appears to be reproduction glass. It's a little more aggressive, almost too aggressive than, say, this guy here, which you can tell better from the inside, from the outside. When you look sideways at a pane of glass with some light behind you, that's when you can tell how seated it is, how irregular it is, whether it's potentially paintbrush glass, which has a sweep to it, which is cylinder glass. The glass could tell you a lot about the age of a window by looking at it. Some of the early glass was super green, very thin. It was not in a flat plane, so a lot of it's curved. Then you'll go into less seeds. Then you'll go into some of a white slight wave once you get into the early 1900s. But you can usually tell the age of a glass and the sash in combination by looking at the two of them. There's an interesting detail around back that I think we should take a look at. which is unique to this time period in this building. So this is the original door to the tavern, which I believe operated from the beginning of the structure, correct? 1768 till late 1700s, I believe. One of the things which is notable is it's still very elaborate. You've got the fluted side pilasters. I think that the base and the kick have been changed, but if you look at this door versus the front door, it's a secondary door. It doesn't have the medallions. It doesn't have the big, I'm going to call them Belection molding blocks on the top, but it's still formal. It's still late Georgian, high style, but secondary to the front door. Now we've come around to the back of the house, rear of the house, and I think it's absolutely fascinating that when you look up at the eave line, they have kept the medallions, the dentil molding, the crown molding, just on the west side of the structure, the front of the structure, and the east side of the structure, but they didn't carry it around the back. They thought, well, let's not spend the money. You know, everything had to be made by hand by then. The amount of time and work to do the wraps on those medallions. You know, it is amazing to me that they would be so high style, yet at the same time, not be wasteful and be frugal enough to say, oh, let's not do the back. Nobody's going to see the back. That would never happen today. Nobody would ever say, hey, let's just do the pretty stuff around the top, around the cornice line, on the front and the sides, and not carry it to the back. It just wouldn't happen. So that is, to me, I love that kind of detail. So when I first came to this property, this is the doorway that I entered through, and I love it. I love the proportions. I think it's cute as the dickens. It's obviously to protect you as you're coming into the building. This was the L that was originally attached in the early 1800s. Originally, the enclosure was not here, but there are some brackets that are very kind of difficult to see that are on the inside. Those were most likely added in the middle to the late 1800s, and then all it had was a roof. So then somebody decided, well, let's enclose it. Let's get us a little more weather protected. So I would say probably in the early 1900s, maybe neoclassical period, 1920. They added the side pieces. These are still original boards. They're wide, they're tongue and groove. And this also had a door on it. You can kind of see right here, this is a receiver for a thumb latch. May have been a reproduction thumb latch or whatever, but that was the means with which they captured the door. They took the door off for obvious reasons. The door swung in. This door swings out, crash bang, lose the door. So now it's just the storm door that goes into the side entrance door to the kitchen of the L. So now we are in the second floor on what is called the evidence room, because it shows the original clapboards that were on the structure. The reveal is a little tighter than the front of the house that they reproduced, but still it's a wide reveal, tall structure, you need it for scale. You can see that it is the original clapboards because it's a scarf joint, where that means the clapboards overlap each other. They were originally only 4 feet long. I believe for whatever, originally clapboard machines only made them 4 feet long and then 6s, but they were hand split, hand planed, and hand skived to go on the structure. It's kind of like fish scales. You could still see here, you've got the original rosehead wrought iron nails for use to attaching the clapboard. The nail would go through the top of the clapboard that was scarfed over the bottom one. So in essence, you're nailing both clapboards at the same time. Another thing that we find interesting in this part of the building is that this section was added in the early 1800s. It was somewhere else in town. It was moved. It was, very common practice back then. It was much more cost effective than building a new structure. You can see the original framing of that 1800 structure. One thing I think that's kind of interesting is that when you look at the rafters and you look at the ridge beam actually extends beyond over into the roof plane of the original hip roof structure. So I don't know, but it's conceivable that the L was one more bay deeper that direction, but they maintained the roof plane and cut off that section of the structure. Highly, very surprising to see that detail, but it's kind of what I'm seeing based upon what I'm seeing up in the attic. Last thing or one of the more, not last things, but elements of interest in this particular room is, so this connects you into the main house proper. This is a 4-panel classic late Georgian door that has been repurposed from somewhere else. You can't see it from the camera lens, but I can see where the old H hinges were applied to the door, top and bottom. They subsequently, when they moved it, they applied the hinges to this side of the door, and they added a later style latch. This is what's called the Norfolk style latch. The earlier ones, everything would have been handmade on them by a blacksmith. This is a combination of both a cast handle, a stamped plate, and a hand-hammered thumb latch, with also a cast retainer on the rear of the door. It's just a little gem. They took it from somewhere else to give them access to the second floor from the newer building to the old building. So here we are in the original tap room when this was a tavern, and from the outside, that's where we saw the less ornamental door that got you into this space. This is a reproduction, an interpretation, which is pretty obvious by how they kind of just, carved out the corners. But up on the ceiling, covered by the plexiglass, is the shadow line of where the old tap room cage, for lack of a better term, was. That they could lock it up. It protected things at night, kept people from, over serving themselves. Another thing in this room, which I find of particular interest to note, is this fireplace. I believe is from the early 1800s. The original, the mantle. The original mantle is upstairs now in the evidence room, but by looking at this, it's classic Federal style with both the dentil, the types of front moldings on the shelf, the width, the proportions, the pilasters, the base. It's classic Federal. I think this room, I believe it was either changed hands to the son, is that correct? Or there was a change in ownership or a transfer. So when that happened, it was very common for people to remodel to their tastes and to current things of the period. This is absolutely lovely. The marble on the hearth, who knows when that was done? Possibly at the same time. Could have been an import. Very high style, very financially, not everybody could attain this type of high level of detail. Evidenced by the potential change in the fireplace during the Federal period, this door would also support that conjecture and assumption. Flat panel door, the sticking on the rails and the stiles is classic Federal style. You've got cast iron butt hinges. Those really didn't come into play right around until the 1800s. And then the lock, you've got a rim lock or a box lock, as what it is known. It's when you can close it. It's all service applied, but yet you could still have a key and lock the door, which this is after, I believe, the tap room closed, but this, for some reason, this was a room that was worthy of being locked. You could tell it's an early door too by you can't see him on that side, but it's a through tenon door. This guy, the rail goes through the stile, and it's pinned by wooden trunnels. So this is not the original door to the tavern, but there's a great story behind that. So now I'd like to introduce Katie Campbell. She is the executive director, and Katie can tell us a little story about what happened to the first door.
This is really an interesting story. So we're all familiar with the Boston Tea Party that happened in December of 1773. But in 1774, March 28th, the Weston Tea Party took place. Isaac Jones was a known Tory, or a loyalist, as it were, and he was a tavern keeper. And we had people visit who, when they came in, wanted their mead or cider or coffee. But there was a tea ban, obviously, because of the Tea Party. But Isaac Jones said he bought his tea from the Dutch and continued to serve tea. The neighborhood was so incensed about this that on the night of the Weston Tea Party, they painted their faces, broke down the door, rushed up the stairs looking for Isaac, who was not here, ran in on Anna Jones, who had just given birth to her youngest child and was laying in bed, broke all the windows, broke all the doors looking for Isaac, stole all of the stores of raisins and beer and sugar, and rushed out. Isaac came back and was stunned about this and wrote a letter in response to a letter that was written saying Isaac was a traitor, and that's why this had happened. And explained that his reasoning for why he was still serving tea, and that he apologized and said, I don't think I did anything wrong. And for some reason, it sort of died down after that. And people didn't give such a hard time to the Jones family. But they were still Tories, and this door was still broken. And John will tell us how we know that.
All right. So you can look at the door, and one of the first things that's very apparent to me is that you've got two pintles. There's a pintle top and a pintle bottom, and the original door would have had a strap hinge on it like that. This one, we'll see if it fits, probably not. Oh, almost. But that would have been the original hinge configuration. You can see that this new door has cast iron butt hinges, has flat panels, has the same sticking on the door that was in the tap room, which would indicate that it was probably early 1800s done over when that room was done over. This is still the locking mechanism. This could have been the locking mechanism of the original door. Why change it? Staple and a staple and drop it in, it works. What I find particularly interesting is if that was in 1774 and this door is probably 1800 or a little bit later, very good possibility there was an interim door. Who knows what that was? Maybe they were able to patch the other door up a little bit to get it by for 20 years or whatever, but it's definitely not the original door, evidenced by the hardware. The transom, tough to tell. There's a cut joint here, but yet this flat stock and this molding runs continuous. As was done in the late 1700s, you trimmed first and plastered to the trim, which is going on here. So this guy's original, this guy's original. Maybe this sash was changed by the reveal line. I don't actually know, but it's definitely early. So little education on lath. Lath is the wooden material that goes onto the studs that the plaster is then applied to, and it gives you your finished wall treatment. Plaster was made up of lime, shells, various materials. What's really neat in this building is that the lath here is what's called accordion lath. Accordion lath were skinny boards sawn lengthwise, probably in a pit, evidenced by the wide cuts on the back, probably 1/2 inch thick. It was in board form. This is only a piece. Then they take a hatchet and they puncture the board and literally spread it out, hence the name accordion lath. They'd nail it up onto the ceiling. Now, mind you, this is probably like a 6-foot long board. by about 1 foot wide. This is the earliest type of lathing there was, and that's what's predominantly in this house, which leads to a lot of irregularity in the walls and the ceilings, gives a tremendous amount of texture. Personally, I love it. Briefly, the next type of lath is called ribbon lath, similar to the clapboards. This is made with a froe. It's from a log, and you take a froe, you put it on the log, and you literally whack it with a mallet, and you slice off all these little pieces. Very irregular. You can tell ribbon lath because it's still lineal versus accordions all over the place, but it still has texture. And then the last type is sawn lath, which is usually in the early, probably Greek Revival period. We have some of that upstairs in one of the rooms. You could tell because it's remodeled, it's ceiling over a ceiling. This is very uniform, 1/4 inch, typically 1.25 inches wide. You can actually still buy this, and we have done projects where we have actually done wooden lath and plaster. You space the lath out approximately 1/4 inch. When you plaster, the plaster goes through the space between the lath, and it's called keying. It like expands and overlaps and goes beyond the board, and that's what holds it from falling off. So this is an absolute off-the-charts detail in this property. I've never seen it. I can't imagine there's many like it, but this panel is on this wrought iron hook. As tall as I am, I'm not going to unlatch it because I'll get bonked, but this would swing down and close that room off as its own room, could be used for sleeping or whatever other purposes. But when they had a meeting, a function, or they did say they actually used it for dancing, this would swing up. This would swing up. There's 3 panels, I believe, that would all swing up and attach to the hooks that are up on the ceiling. A, it's an amazing thing that they devised that architecturally. B, that it worked. And C, that it's still in existence and all the hardware is there. It's just it's a true treasure. So one of the unique features of this panel wall that has to hinge are these hinges right here. Absolutely spectacular. They are definitely a suspension type of hinge where the barrel is very narrow. If it was going to be holding up a door on the horizontal, the barrel would be a lot longer. And a really interesting feature is that you've got one big large panel, then you've got a smaller panel. Well, if both of those panels are in the down position, there's no way to enter that room. So they cut a door into the panel. And I believe on the opposite side, there's a throw mechanism that keeps that in the fixed position. So when this hinges up, it stays in its spot. You can tell by the early hinge style. This is what I was saying about a longer barrel in a horizontal application versus a vertical application where it's suspended. But you can still see the hand planing on this door, at least I can from my angle. I imagine it would take a couple people to pick this up, and probably another 2 or 3 or whatever to get on the other end. There is a little mystery here. I don't understand it. There's hinge shadows here, and there's a filler here. I don't know why, because this panel line all lines up. Maybe this was another door. Maybe originally the door was here, and they moved it over there. As with much of this tour today, a lot of this is conjecture. There are no solid answers to some of this. It's just the best that we can do based upon past experience. All right, so we've got 2 windows in the upper hallway, one on the north and one on the south. Absolutely gorgeous. It has a window seat on the bottom. In order to accomplish that, they have made the wall, they've padded it out. As you can see, the increased thickness now, probably almost 12 to 13 inches. That allows them to put a window seat in at the base of the window without having a huge projection beyond the wall at the base. The other thing which is unique to these 2 window openings is this is what's called the splay angle jamb. And a normal jamb goes in at a 90-degree angle, perpendicular to the sash. This one is splayed back. What that does is it allows more light into the room, as well as in this situation with the depth of the wall, they could add the paneling, they could dress it up. It really is, all this being done by hand, you can only imagine how long it would take for this whole piece to be constructed.
One of the interesting things about the Golden Ball Tavern is that Isaac Jones, the tavern keeper, had his own office that was built into the house. And oddly enough, it was built upstairs on the second floor next to his bedroom. It was a small enclosed space, but it had an east-facing window that could see people coming in and out of the tavern, but also up and down the Boston Post Road. So he would know when guests were approaching and or leaving. The space is unusual also because it has its own fireplace. And even though the family has a fireplace in the bedroom right next door, this would allow him, with the door closed, to keep this space warm, especially in the wintertime. The last thing I think is very interesting about this office is the paneling. And it's paneling in and of itself is not that interesting, but paneling on an inside room where nobody would see it except Isaac is basically a testament to the fact that Isaac was A, wealthy enough to have it in his office, but B, that it was something he had just for him that was in his office. So this mirrors the paneling that's in the hallway, both upstairs and downstairs. And I guess Isaac just said, I'd like a piece in my office, and here it is. So it's a very cool space, but tells us a lot about Isaac and the way he treated himself and treated his business.
So that concludes our little tour of the exterior and interior today. And of course, we barely scratched the surface of all the wonderful little details at this property, but I think we covered a couple that were hopefully of interest to you. And hopefully you all can come by and see it in person. And it really truly is a treasure, and the grounds are wonderful as well.